Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People's Story. 15 years ago, I made what I still consider the best investment of my career. As a real estate developer who'd spent decades transforming neglected properties into profitable ventures, I'd developed a knack for spotting diamonds in the rough. This particular property was a sprawling 5-acre lot with a charming mid-century home and an Olympic-sized swimming pool that dated back to the 1950s. The pool was what initially caught my attention. Built by a wealthy eccentric who had once been an Olympic hopeful, it was a magnificent structure with mosaic tile work, a proper diving area, and even a small clubhouse. When I purchased the property, the surrounding acres were mostly undeveloped woodland. Within 3 years, however, a developer bought the adjacent land and constructed an upscale residential community around my property. During construction, the developer approached me about selling, but I declined. I loved my little oasis. Instead, we reached an informal arrangement. The new homes would be marketed with community pool access as a selling point, with the understanding that while I maintained ownership of the pool, residents could use it during reasonable hours. The previous owners had established this goodwill gesture decades ago, and I saw no reason to change it. Over the years, I invested thousands in maintaining the pool, upgrading the filtration system, installing modern safety features, and preserving the vintage aesthetic that made it special. I employed a part-time maintenance person and paid for all operating costs myself. The arrangement worked beautifully for over a decade. Residents appreciated having access to such a unique amenity, and I enjoyed seeing families making memories there. I'd often grill by the poolside and chat with neighbors. It was a genuine community hub. Everything changed when the Homeowners Association elected a new president 2 months ago. I first met her at the pool, actually. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and I was skimming leaves when she marched up, clipboard in hand, wearing oversized sunglasses that seemed to swallow half her face. "You must be the pool maintenance person," she said, not bothering with introductions. "I need to discuss some changes we'll be implementing." I smiled politely. "Actually, I'm the property owner. This pool and the surrounding land belong to me." She lowered her sunglasses slightly, looking me up and down. I was wearing old shorts and a faded t-shirt, my regular weekend attire when doing pool maintenance. "Right," she said, skepticism dripping from that single word. "Well, whoever you are, I'm the new HOA president. We're planning to enhance security around our community pool, installing proper gates, implementing a key card system, the works." "That's interesting," I replied carefully. "But this isn't a community pool. It's my private property." She laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "That's not what the property records say. This pool has been part of the community amenities since the neighborhood was built." Before I could correct her, she checked her watch dramatically. "I've got to run. The contractor will be here Monday to begin measurements for the security gate. Please make sure the area is accessible." She strode away, leaving me baffled. I knew I should have pursued the conversation, but I figured a simple misunderstanding could be cleared up easily enough. I'd just need to pull my property documents and explain the situation. I was wrong. Monday morning, I was on a video call with clients when I heard equipment being unloaded outside. Through my office window, I saw 3 workers placing stakes around the perimeter of my pool area. I quickly ended my call and headed outside. "Excuse me," I called to the worker who appeared to be in charge. "What's going on here?" "HOA contracted us to install security fencing around the community pool," he explained, consulting his clipboard. "Got all the approvals right here." I asked to see the paperwork, which showed the HOA president's signature authorizing work on what was listed as community property. There was no mention that the pool sat on my privately owned land. "I'm sorry, but there's been a mistake," I explained. "This pool is on private property, my property. The HOA has no authority to install anything here." The worker looked uncomfortable. "Look, man, I just go where they tell me. You'll need to take this up with whoever hired us." "That would be me," came a familiar voice from behind. The HOA president approached, now dressed in a business suit that screamed authority. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, there's a problem," I replied. "You're attempting to install structures on my private property without consent." She smiled condescendingly. "I've reviewed all the neighborhood documents. This pool is listed as a community amenity in all the original sales materials. The HOA has every right to secure community property. The developer received permission to mention pool access as a perk, but ownership was never transferred," I explained. "I have the deed and property surveys to prove it." Her smile didn't waver. "Well, adverse possession laws exist for a reason. This pool has been used by the community for over a decade." I almost laughed at her misapplication of legal principles. "With my explicit permission, that's not adverse possession." She turned to the contractors. Please continue your work. If this gentleman interferes, call me immediately." Then she turned back to me, voice lowered. "Look, we all know what's happening here. You're just the maintenance man trying to cause trouble. If you persist, we'll simply ban you from accessing the community pool altogether." That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate attempt to appropriate my property. "The work stops now," I said firmly, addressing the contractors. "This is private property, and you don't have the owner's permission to be here." The crew leader hesitated, looking between us. The HOA president pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police to report trespassing." "Excellent idea," I replied calmly. "I have my property deed inside. I'll be happy to show them." 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. The HOA president immediately approached them. "This man is preventing authorized workers from accessing community property and threatening them," she said, pointing at me. I introduced myself and explained the situation. "Officers, I'm the legal owner of this property. I have my deed and property surveys inside that clearly show this pool and surrounding land belong to me." One officer remained with the group while I took the other inside to review my documentation. When we returned, the officer explained to everyone that this was indeed private property and that the contractors needed my permission to proceed. "But the HOA has already collected special assessments from all residents for this security project," the president protested. "The board approved this expenditure months ago." That was news to me. "You've been collecting money from residents for improvements to my property without consulting me?" She ignored my question, speaking only to the officers. "This man has allowed community use of the pool for years. He can't suddenly claim exclusive ownership now." "Ma'am," the officer said patiently, "allowing access doesn't transfer ownership. The property deed is clear." After the police left, ensuring the contractors packed up their equipment, the HOA president glared at me. "This isn't over. The community needs security and we will have it." I tried to be reasonable. "I'm happy to discuss legitimate security concerns, but any changes need my approval as the property owner." "We'll see about that," she replied before marching away. Over the next 2 weeks, I discovered the extent of her campaign. She'd been telling residents I was a difficult maintenance worker, trying to claim ownership of their community pool. She'd collected a special assessment of $500 per household for the security improvements, money that had already been paid by most of the 120 homes in the community. Neighbors who'd previously been friendly became cold. I received anonymous notes in my mailbox calling me selfish. The HOA newsletter, which I found thrown on my driveway, featured an article about protecting our community assets from outsiders, with a poorly disguised reference to me. Things came to a head when I discovered a notice had been posted on the pool gate announcing renovations would begin the following Monday, requiring the pool to be closed for 2 weeks. The notice bore the HOA letterhead and president's signature. I removed the unauthorized notice and sent an email to the HOA board clarifying that as the legal owner of the property, no renovations had been approved. I received cease and desist letters in response, poorly formatted documents that appeared to be from the president's lawyer cousin threatening legal action for my interference with community property. Then came the community meeting. I received a flyer announcing an emergency HOA meeting to vote on new pool rules and address security concerns. I decided to attend. The community center was packed when I arrived. The HOA president stood at the front, pointer in hand, beside a presentation titled "Securing Our Community Assets." I took a seat in the back, listening as she outlined elaborate plans for not just security gates, but a complete renovation of our community pool. "The troublemaker who maintains the pool has been spreading misinformation about ownership," she announced to the crowd. "Rest assured, our HOA lawyers confirm the pool is community property, as it's been used as such for over a decade." Several residents nodded in agreement. Others looked confused. "We've already collected the initial assessment for the security features," she continued, "and tonight we'll vote on the additional assessment needed for the complete renovation package I've proposed." She clicked to a slide showing financial figures. $60,000 already collected, with another $120,000 needed for the full renovation plan. My blood boiled as I realized how much money she'd taken from residents under false pretenses. When she opened the floor for questions, I raised my hand. She pointedly ignored me until an older resident said, "I think the property owner has something to say." All eyes turned to me as I stood. "Thank you," I said. "I've enjoyed sharing my pool with all of you for many years. However, I need to clarify some misinformation. This pool and the surrounding property are legally mine. I have the deed and surveys to prove it." Murmurs spread through the crowd as I continued. "The arrangement has always been informal. I own and maintain the pool, and I allow community access as a courtesy. I've invested thousands each year in maintenance, safety features, and operations." The HOA president tried to interrupt, but several residents called for me to continue. "I've recently learned that many of you have been charged assessments for improvements to my property without my knowledge or consent. No one has the legal authority to collect money for modifications to property they don't own." The room erupted in confused conversations. One resident stood up. "We each paid $500 for these security improvements. Are you saying that was collected improperly?" "I'm afraid so," I replied. "I never authorized any changes to my property, nor was I consulted about them." The HOA president finally managed to regain control. "This is exactly the kind of misinformation I mentioned. We have documentation." "May we see this documentation?" asked one of the board members, looking uncomfortable. "I'll provide it at the next board meeting," she replied quickly. "I brought copies of my documentation," I said, holding up a folder, "including the original property deed, surveys, and tax records showing I've been paying property taxes on the pool and surrounding land for 15 years. The mood in the room shifted palpably. Residents began asking pointed questions about the collected funds and demanding to see proof of the HOA claim to the pool. The meeting dissolved into chaos, with the president eventually storming out when cornered about where the collected money was being kept. The next day, I consulted with my property attorney, who confirmed what I already knew. The pool was unquestionably my property, and the HOA had no right to collect funds for modifications to it. He also pointed out that the president's actions potentially constituted fraud. We sent official letters to each board member outlining the legal ownership of the property and requesting an immediate accounting of all funds collected for pool modifications. We also demanded a retraction of all claims that the pool was community property. The response was swift. Within days, most board members distanced themselves from the president, claiming they'd been misled about the property's ownership status. An emergency board meeting was called, from which the president was notably absent. The vice president contacted me privately, explaining that the president had presented fabricated documents suggesting HOA ownership of the pool. When asked to produce originals after my challenge, she couldn't. They'd discovered the collected assessment money had been deposited into a special account only she could access. 2 weeks later, residents received letters announcing the president's resignation from the board and a full refund of their assessments. The letter included an apology for the misunderstanding regarding pool ownership and a commitment to work with me, the legal owner, on any future pool-related matters. I later learned the former president had used some of the collected funds to pay for a vacation, claiming it as a property research trip. She faced potential criminal charges, but ultimately reached a settlement that required full restitution and community service. She sold her house and moved away shortly thereafter. As for me, I decided to formalize the arrangement that had worked so well for years. Working with the new, much more reasonable HOA board, we drafted a proper usage agreement. The community would contribute a modest annual fee toward maintenance costs, and in return, residents would have continued access during set hours. The agreement explicitly acknowledged my ownership while creating a sustainable framework for shared enjoyment. The new board president, a retired judge with actual legal knowledge, approached me after signing the agreement. "Thank you for your generosity," he said. "Most people would have just shut down community access after what happened." I shrugged. "I've always believed in being a good neighbor. Besides, a pool is meant to be enjoyed." The following summer was the best yet. With the formal agreement in place, residents appreciated the amenity even more. Some even volunteered to help with seasonal maintenance. The community hosted a pool appreciation day, with many residents personally thanking me for continuing to share my property. Sometimes I think about how differently things might have turned out if I hadn't stood my ground. My little victory wasn't just about protecting my property. It was about honesty, respect, and the true meaning of community. In the end, everyone learned an important lesson. Being a good neighbor goes both ways. The next one is a malicious compliances story. So I work at a large company, Fortune 50 company. But like everywhere, management comes up with one-size-fits-none metrics. The latest was revealed to us by our manager, who surprisingly is the hero of this story. It has always been the metric that if you fell below 70% of your quota on a quota-eligible role, you risk being put on a performance review plan. It is also well known that anyone getting on a PRP is pretty much toast. Either you get fired for failing the PRP, or you are first on the next layoff list. And usually they replace you with a newbie fresh out of college in one of the lower two bands. My particular team is made up of all senior people. Every one of us is in one of the top 2 skill grades, so we know we are a target. Which is insane, as all of us engage the C-suite at other very large Fortune 500 companies and act as trusted advisors. We cannot be replaced by a new grad with intern-level performance. So our intrepid hero, my boss, is pulled into a 2-day seminar about 2 months ago that goes all the way to the General Manager of Sales Americas. Several senior HR managers are there too. It is a rare in-person meeting, so people are cautious, but at least they know it is not a mass layoff kind of deal, as the first day is about the path forward and how important our division is to the company strategy. They go on about how our division is the front line of expanding sales in our partner program, to take it from 60% of revenue to 85% of revenue, with 75% of new growth expected to come from the partner channels. The company absolute is relying on our division and our skilled staff to deliver on that goal. The second day is different, however. In the afternoon, they lay out the new plan for technical sellers. 80% attainment per year and backdating 2 years. It is a rare in-person meeting, so people are cautious, but my manager goes into, I am just asking questions mode. So let me understand, if last year they hit 100% attainment, and 75% of the team did, but the previous year they hit 79%, then they are on a PRP. HR hems and haws. Well, yes, that is how it would work. I see. And there is no exceptions? The GM speaks up. That's correct. Everyone must be a top performer. No exceptions. My manager starts gathering his things up. Would you mind if I skip the rest of the day? I have a lot of work to do, apparently. The GM looks at him. Well, no, we have more to cover. What is so urgent? He looks at the GM and maliciously complies with the stated metrics. Based on the metrics and the no exceptions rule, I have to prepare PRPs for my entire team. No exceptions. I will need to start the open headcount to hire replacements for everyone too. The GM looks confused, attempting to digest this new information. Most of the rest of the managers stick their hands up. We need to go too. We need to write up PRPs for all our people too and submit open headcounts. A quick count shows that 80% of our division would be on a PRP. Given the failure rate, that means about 70% of the team will be fired, 10% will be laid off, and 20% will remain. For the growth strategy of the company, the tip of the spear in partner sales. My boss points out that retention of personnel and reduced turnover is part of the roll-up objectives, as well as attainment of his reports. That means he will be PRP'd, as will his manager and her manager, all the way up the chain, no exceptions. The meeting wraps up after the discussion dies down, and the GM says they are not implementing this now, but in a few months. In those 2 months, there are more online meetings, questions asked, more data pulled from the HR systems, meetings with HR and legal, who is now very interested in this plan of theirs. Culminating in a meeting this last Monday where the revised plan is revealed. A new exceptions plan has been put in place, at the insistence of the legal department. Gone is the informal, put together a package to be evaluated for an optional exception for your employee. Now, there is a set of formal exceptions that cover a number of categories. Legal ones like taking family leave or medical short-term disability in the last 3, and functional ones like having been moved between departments or job titles or having a non-quota designation in the last 2 years. If the quota plan changed significantly or had a metric with no previous history to set the target, there is 10 or 12 categories, depending if you count the overlaps. An exception resets the timer to the next calendar year, so if someone qualifies in January, they are off the hook until next January. Turns out everyone in the division now qualifies for one or more of those exceptions. Imagine that. Epilogue. Turns out, HR did not do an analysis of how many people would be impacted in our division, as the numbers were done worldwide over 100K employees with quota, not by department. Their number said 11% of us would end up on PRPs. Let's not get into how they are trying to reduce headcount by driving people into leaving or retiring early. Also, when legal found out they were backdating the requirement, they went ballistic. Legal also went spare when they saw no exceptions for federally protected leave like family or medical disability. Gotta love my boss. He looks out for us, often by maliciously complying with stupid requirements. The next one is a pro-revenge story. This one is a double government employee event, and what you should know is, if you get the attention of a government employee and make them angry, they will make your life a living hell. Sorry, this is a long one. The setup is that I was working for a local county government in the permitting department that handled drainage and floodplain enforcement. I received a complaint from a homeowner, nice guy, lived next door to a house that was part of an incorporated village. Not nice guy. Nice guy lived in an unincorporated portion of the county, and hence the call to me as an agent of the county. I drove out to the site and to investigate and discovered some interesting facts. The permitting agent for the village allowed the incorporated homeowner to fill his lot, affecting the drainage, which caused the unincorporated lot to flood every time there was anything more than light rain. Nice Guy indicated that there was some tension between him and Not Nice Guy, and part of the issue was that Nice Guy and his partner were a gay couple. This ran up a red flag for me, but in trying to be impartial, I took the information and some photos for the file and indicated that I would contact the village to find a resolution. I wrote a letter and then called the village inspector, Jackwagon, to discuss. I was told by Jackwagon that the village could do as it pleased and that I could do nothing to stop Not Nice Guy from doing as they pleased, as it was approved by the village. There was then a comment about those type of people, the gay couple, making complaints just to cause trouble. I was now on the case, and it was time to make sure everything done on the incorporated lot was 100% legal. At this point, the game certainly was now on, because if there is one thing that grinds my gears, it is bullying. I went back out and spoke to Nice Guy to let them know what I was up to, and also that I was not going to let this slide. I then started investigating the elevations on the two lots and what fill had been placed on the incorporated lot. The Not Nice Guy came out and started getting belligerent about my presence and ongoing investigation. He incorrectly stated that I did not have jurisdiction over his lot and that he would be calling the police. I patiently listened and then pulled out my two-way radio and requested that the home base dispatch both a village and a county police unit to the location. I then indicated that since there was a regulatory floodplain on his lot, I did in fact have jurisdiction, and that I would be exercising my right to determine the impact of his fill activities upon that floodplain. Both of the police units showed up, and I let them know what was going on. They were both appropriately agitated to have to waste their time and let Not Nice Guy know that I was within my authority to proceed with the investigation. A little while later, while I was measuring things, Jackwagon showed up. He stated berating me about harassing the village resident and threatening calling my boss and filing a complaint and so forth. I invited him to do so, quoting which parts of the code he should indicate I was violating. I was using marking paint to show the limits of the floodplain for the photos for the file, and what do you know, Jackwagon's shoe got painted when he tried to stop me. Obviously, he was even more angry, as was the homeowner, due to very bright orange paint in the grass in his yard. I pointed out I had done the same on the neighboring lots, but they just kept complaining. It was actually marking chalk that comes off pretty easily. Interestingly, I found two really wrong things on Not Nice Guy's lot. 1, there was fill placed in the floodplain, and 2, a garden shed was built on the fill and partially within the floodplain. Both are a big no-no and are actually against federal law, so the course of action had two parts. 1, make the incorporated homeowner remove the fill and shed from the floodplain, and 2, let Nice Guy place fill in their lot outside of the floodplain to counteract the fill remaining in Not Nice Guy's lot outside of the floodplain. I also told Nice Guy it would be a good idea to run a field tile on their side to drain the water that would inevitably pond up between the two lots when it rained. Predictably, Not Nice Guy and Jackwagon got super angry when I sent the letter out that there were violations that either had to be corrected, remove fill and shed, or apply for a revision of the floodplain with the Army Corps of Engineers. Good luck with that. This then led to a meeting at the county office with Not Nice Guy Jackwagon, my supervisor, and myself. Quickly things went to 11 and there was yelling by Jackwagon about abuse of power, etc. The department head came into the conference room and told them both they were wrong and that they should leave peacefully and comply or face the consequences, fines. The best part was that Not Nice Guy had to apply for a permit, and guess who was the one to review and approve it? That's right, yours truly. Now, I was following the letter of the law, but you have to know that poor government workers are underpaid and overworked. Strangely, the permit for Nice Guy was almost immediately approved, while Not Nice Guy had to have a very thorough review to ensure it was correct. You could make a case I was abusing my power, but I can assure you that the timing for their review was well within acceptable limits. Also, how could I be held to account that they misfiled 3 times before they finally got it right? Generally, if you behaved like a civil human and came to the office, we would help you get things done properly, so the permit would go through first time, but not nice. Guy decided he could do it all on his own, so it took him 3 tries. Had he come to the office, I would have given him the same service as others, but he decided to take the hard route, and therefore I didn't give a single inch when it came to the submission being perfectly correct. Ultimately, the situation was resolved, but it took a lot more effort than it should have. Moral of the story, don't be an entitled homophobic a-hole. The next one is an entitled people story. As it seems, the nurse from my previous post has decided she couldn't care less about her job now that her contract is reaching its end. Now, to set the story. My mother works at a state pharmacy who supplies for public home care teams. She does not have any type of medical degree, so some details might be a little fuzzy, but I'll do my best to explain according to her account. So, there is this patient A, a child who is fed through some kind of sterile system. I don't know if it is a machine or something else, but it has tubes. Every week, this nurse's team goes there to check on him and do any necessary maintenance. Since the nurse is the highest authority in the team, unless a doctor is required, she is always the one responsible for decision-making and has the final word. Nonetheless, she is supposed to follow protocol. This time around, as they were finishing setting things up, the nurse noticed bubbles in the tubes, which of course is troublesome. So much so that, according to protocol, she should call an ambulance and take A to the hospital to redo the feeding system. Rather than do that, though, she broke the sterile environment to remove the bubbles manually. If that wasn't risky enough, knowing that it could cause glycemic imbalance on A, she took the device used to measure the patient's glycemic levels in the team kit and gave to A's mother, instructing her that if there was any problem, then, and only then, she should call an ambulance. Thing is, this device is state property. It is not supposed to be lent to patients as other teams might need them. As far as I'm aware, you can only leave it in a patient's house if a formal request is approved by some higher UPS. The nurse, however, didn't say a word about it to anyone else. Instead, she kept quiet the whole week as the pharmacy staff was turning the place down looking for the unaccounted device, throwing accusations everywhere as the current ambient there is far from the most organized one. Her misdeed was only uncovered when, 1 week later, one of the nurse technicians came to the pharmacy staff, happily sharing the news that they found the device in A's home. And so they questioned the mother who cluelessly told the story, not knowing that what the nurse did could have actually put her child's life in danger of an infection, not just cause a glycemic imbalance. This woman is a total menace, if you ask me. I have more stories about her. Maybe I'll post later. Nonetheless, until she actually kills someone, there is just nothing that can be done. Hopefully her contract will never be renewed again. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.